So time now to take you through the morning's papers. Here with me to review them are the CEO of International Marketing Partners, Alison Stewart-Allen, and author and journalist Nikki Hodgson. So very good morning to both of you. Lovely to see you both. Some pretty grim front pages, though, for us to deal with. Inevitably, the case of Lucy Letby dominating the newspapers, not just the front pages, but pages of coverage, and some pretty grim detail in there. Alison, you've picked out The Guardian to kick us off.
Yes. Well, I mean, you know, I'm sure every viewer has, sharing the incredible sadness nationally over this story. I mean, it is truly unbelievable. And The Guardian's take on it is that bosses failed to act, and that collapses in communication. It implies that there's a deeper cultural issue within the NHS about listening to the clinicians who speak up. And perhaps the wider issue over this is that a reassessment of how whistleblowers are encouraged and treated and rewarded, if you like, within the NHS versus how that hasn't seemed to be happening over decades. But you know, there's no escaping the incredible shock that everyone watching this story play out will be feeling right now about this.
That's right. And as they say, Britain's worst child serial killer, found guilty of murdering 7 babies and attempting to kill 6 more. And loads of detail about the way that she killed them, which is incredibly distressing, but also her reaction afterwards, the sense that she was enjoying the attention of the drama and the trauma, and there's lots of evidence around that as well. But this question of whether it could be stopped is picked up by a number of the papers, isn't it, Nikki? The Express, for example, murdered babies should have been saved.
Yeah, I mean, it kind of beggars belief that so many people were terrified about what was happening. You know, parents themselves, and I think there's reason to trust a parent's instinct when something really feels off in a medical unit.
And yet these are the people that you're supposed to be able to trust.
Oh my gosh, absolutely, absolutely. And you're very vulnerable at that time when you've had a new baby. You know, I had a baby in February, and it's very hard reading this story actually for that reason, because it makes me think back to just how very vulnerable you feel at those moments when you've just given birth, and you are completely dependent on the skills and the care given by the medical staff. It wouldn't even occur to you to question it in many ways because your mind's not in that place. Yeah. So if as a parent you start to be suspicious about what's going on, that really is a red flag for clinicians. You know, you wouldn't randomly accuse somebody of doing something terrible to your child in a hospital. And I think also the procedures are really problematic in the NHS about raising grievances. I've worked in the NHS many years ago in cancer waiting patient lists, which is a really unpleasant job actually and really difficult. And I've also worked in clinical negligence. And what is really profound to me is the fact that definitely in clinical negligence is a very straightforward process about how people raise a complaint and then it's investigated in certain ways in different departments, and then you potentially have independent inquiries into what's gone on. So I think what's disturbing is the fact that the clinicians who are extremely skilled, not just only in matters of medicine, but in matters of dealing with people, had raised to the managers that they were very suspicious. So there were multiple concerns, multiple complaints raised about this lady, Lucy Letby, and then they were still kind of not listened to. And is that because of the concern there was a reputational issue, or that it was too difficult to dig into? I mean, it's just not good enough to not investigate those kinds of queries.
Well, that's right. And again, the Daily Mail also goes with that angle. They had 10 chances to stop her. And there was this sense, wasn't there, from those who did report her, that hospital bosses were concerned about the impact. They kind of implied that they would turn the neonatal unit into a police crime scene. The doctors who first raised it got real credit in the case for helping the investigation.
Absolutely. But we need more of this. We need to encourage speaking up. There's a lot of discussion these days about this idea of psychological safety, that you are in an organization, whether it's a public institution like the NHS, or you're in a bank, or you're in any business for that matter, that you feel it's okay to flag bad behavior or flag concerns. And clearly, the NHS has a long way to go. Not just, I would argue, not just in this hospital either, by the way, but across the piece, about being able to investigate anybody who raises any concern and that it's taken seriously.
Well, yes, and the government has announced an independent inquiry, haven't they now, into the circumstances, and the intention presumably is that lessons are learned.
Well, hopefully, but so far, how long has this been going on? 2 years, possibly longer. They're opening 4,000 more cases over the years, potentially.
And I'll bring in the Mirror at that point, because they're asking the question, how many more? Because yes, they are now investigating she's not just worked at the Countess of Cheshire Hospital, so they are looking into other departments that she's worked in, and as you say, 4,000 cases will be reviewed to see whether it's possible that more crimes were committed.
Well, absolutely, and maybe there'll be, so-called lesser crimes, as in, people who commit murders tend to have form. They don't tend to go straight to a murder. Some people do, some people don't, when you look at the kind of like criminal profile of people. But I think what's important is, again, looking at the other hospitals where she worked, the other departments, again, where there must have been some kind of signs that maybe, her behaviour was sort of off, or maybe there were other people that had suspicions earlier on. And, those units perhaps maybe had a chance to talk to other hospitals and didn't do that. I think what we've got to do is really plot a trajectory through her performance and behaviour in order to kind of understand where it started and how. And let's just pray that actually those 4,000 cases don't bring anything else up.
Well, yes, and an awful lot of coverage as well about what possibly was the motivation, and a sense that she clearly enjoyed the attention. She even looked at a family's Facebook pages to gauge the reaction after they'd lost their child.
It's very ghoulish.
She had killed.
Yeah, it's
very,
amazing.
very ghoulish.
It's very ghoulish. And no doubt that speculation to an extent, because obviously we didn't hear any kind of confession from her. She denied it all the way to the end.
Yeah.
There will be, that kind of coverage will continue.
Yeah.
Let's move to some of the other stories around, though, in the morning. The Financial Times, as you would imagine, goes with a different lead story, and it's one that you wanted to talk about, Alison.
Yes, so SoftBank is a large Japanese investment bank, and ARM Holdings is a significant British success story that makes chips and is imminently listing in the United States its initial public offering to sell shares, and SoftBank owns 3/4 of this organization and now just bought the final quarter. So it now owns them outright, and it's valued at $64 billion. And why this is so great as a business story is because it's yet another example of a fantastic British company that has demonstrated its global relevance, its innovation. It reaches people all over the world. All of us may not know the company, but we know the chips. We use the chips because they're in our phones. In fact, almost every mobile phone has an ARM chip in it. So the fact that there's more investment coming into the company means that more British ingredients, if you like, will be in cars, more phones, all sorts of devices. So it's actually really, thankfully, to offset what we've been talking about, it's actually a really good British business story.
Okay. Well, very briefly, while we're on the subject of national pride, you like to see what I did there. The Lionesses on the front of the Star, their prediction that they're going to win on penalties. I mean, we've got 30 seconds. I don't even go into the way in which they've come to that conclusion.
Well, quickly, they've consulted an asparagus psychic who's have positive predictions on other national matters, so apparently it's definitely going to happen.
Who hasn't consulted an asparagus psychic, I ask you? We've all done it.
Octopuses too.
Let's hope the word win is the correct one there. Plenty of time to build up to that ahead of tomorrow. But we're out of time for now, but I'm very happy to say that you'll both be back in an hour's time, where we will look a little bit further into the papers as well. Thanks very much indeed. But we've got lots more coming up here on Sky News Breakfast, and we'll be live at the Countess of Cheshire Hospital, where those questions are being asked about whether Lucy Letby could have been stopped.